And we are so fortunate this evening to be joined by George Scott, Talent Acquisition Specialist with YMCA of Greater Des Moines, Annalise Tarnowski, co-founder of the Rook Room and also a staff member at the Iowa Center for Economic Success, and Catherine Lehman, Resources Unit Leader at FEMA. Let's see, I think I got through all of my housekeeping. So let's have our panelists for our first question. Just going to have everybody introduce themselves, a little bit about what role you're in now and what drew you to your involvement in your career area. So we're going to start with Annalise and then George and then Catherine, and then I will have some other questions to ask. All right,
Cool.
Annalise.
Thank
All right.
you. All right. So my path is weird, but I think everyone will probably say that. I have worked in a bunch of nonprofits, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point. But over the last almost 5 years now, I've been working with a friend that I met while volunteering on a board for Drake, actually, to build our own business, which is called the Rook Room. It's sort of become this like mobile community space for people who are interested in meeting new people, getting to know their friends, and doing all sorts of like activities around the table without your phone. So a lot of it is through board games, through play, through card games, D&D, all that kind of stuff. And we're working on opening a board game lounge in Des Moines. And then additionally, I work at the Iowa Center for Economic Success. When I decided to leave my kind of full-time career to focus on the Rook Room just a couple of months ago, I did not want to stay just in my basement, always working on the business. I wanted to stay connected to the business community, leave my house, make a little bit of a paycheck while I'm working on the business. So I now do a bunch of just admin assistant work here at the Iowa Center, which there's a lot of cool stuff we do here, but the main thing is empowering Iowans to build and grow their small businesses. So I actually found this through building my own business when I needed some advice and webinars and help and coaching, figuring out what to do first and what to do next. So it's all kind of one big thing that I'm sure we'll get into more of, but that's like the quick version.
Awesome. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, so I'm George Scott. I work talent acquisition with the YMCA of Greater Des Moines. Overall, I've been in the Des Moines area for about 1 year now. So I'm pretty new to it. Before that, I was an executive with Chick-fil-A. So overall, I got to do a lot of stuff with running my own team and traveling the country, helping train other people in our talent throughout the other Chick-fil-A's throughout the country. Overall, what I chose my path on, what made me want to choose this path was overall, I'm just really passionate about coaching and helping other people. And one of the things was, especially when I acquire or recruit talent, is, outside of making some money, what are you passionate about? What do you want to get better at? And how can I help you get there? So, if you need help getting out of your shell, maybe customer service or putting you on the front desk might do that. If you want to be a better leader, you'll be surprised at what childcare and some other things can do working with children and being a leader and how they may look up to you and what kind of role models may need in our community. So those are some things I do. Outside of that, I also too work with youth justice initiatives. So working with more of a restorative justice program, and helping students, that may have made some bad choices and mistakes, and overall helping them get back on the right path. I also too work with Black Access. I'm on the board of that nonprofit, and I run a mentorship program through Central Campus in Roosevelt, and then teaching a self-efficacy class with them to help them get their confidence up. But that's just a little bit about me. I'm excited to get to know you guys today.
Awesome. Thanks, George, and welcome to Des Moines.
Yeah, thank you.
And Catherine.
All right. Hi, I'm Catherine. I graduated from Drake in 2022, so I'm still like early on in my career. When I was getting to the end of my senior year at Drake, I was very indecisive. I had majored in LPS and data analytics and computer science, so that tells you anything. I was always pulled in many different directions, but none of the like direct paths from those majors really appealed to me, even though I liked the course content and liked my experience at Drake. So I was kind of racking my brain before graduation for what to do. And that's when I started considering doing a year of service. And I didn't know exactly what that would look like. I know like there's Peace Corps out there, all those things, but I ended up landing on an AmeriCorps program. They have a ton of different ones. Highly recommend looking into all the different ones they have. But I did AmeriCorps NCCC, specifically one called FEMA Corps. So it's a residential program. You train at one of their 4 campuses around the country. So I was out in Sacramento, and I was able to be a team leader. You can apply to be either, regardless of your experience. I was on a team of people 18 to 26, so it's kind of was cool to be also with, you know, people right out of college or high school, all with different experiences and backgrounds. And we went around the country doing different projects with FEMA, so responding to like hurricanes, tornadoes, working at a regional or headquarters office. So it was really diverse set of experiences. They held a hiring event at the end of the year, and at that point I felt like I had found a purpose. I felt like emergency management really was a blend of everything I'd learned at Drake, kind of taking like the law and politics, like society side of things, as well as some, you know, information gathering, data analytics, and was able to roll that into a job now. Resources unit leader at FEMA. It's kind of like an ambiguous title, but essentially I do a lot of reporting and planning in the field when there are disasters. Like we have field offices, and so I'm on a team of people that goes and responds and helps support the state whenever there's something large. Hurricanes are the most common thing I would be called in for, but yeah, new to the job, started in September, so have a lot to learn, but that's part of the fun.
Awesome. This is really cool because you all have such varied and diverse backgrounds and experiences in what you're doing. We have nonprofit, governmental, and self-owned businesses here too. So I think it just goes to show that there's no one pathway for creating change in your career. Like Annalise said, yeah, you're all going to have a little bit of a maybe weird background, but that makes it not weird because it's just common that way. And so as you guys are listening to their stories and what they do, feel free to start thinking of some questions that you have for our panelists. And many of them are doing more than one thing. So, you know, your questions can be geared towards any of their activities. But yeah, we just have, I think, a lot to dig into a little bit here. So Catherine shared about her educational experience. Anybody want to share a little bit more about your educational background and if that led to where you are today, or, you know, if it did not too?
For sure. Uh, Going to Drake definitely got me to where I am today because I would not even live in Des Moines if it weren't for Drake. I'm from the Twin Cities. I graduated in 2015. My majors were sociology was one of them, like a lot of you in the comments, as well as radio and TV producing in the journalism school. I really liked the idea of working in journalism and getting to know like new things every day, like a lot about one thing and a little bit about a lot of things. That seemed like really fun. When I graduated, I had really liked audio and video, like editing more than producing. So I started a podcast with some friends who went to Drake, and I was working for a small nonprofit helping people um, who are pharmacists or pharmacy techs get their continuing education so they can keep their degrees up to date. So I was doing a couple of things all at once, but yeah, going to Drake, the classes as well as some of the like boards that I sat on and the activities I got into really led a lot of my path because I ended up doing a lot of fundraising for all the places I've worked. So I worked for an org that helps people find housing, an org that helps people who are unemployed find gainful employment for the long term. I worked at Iowa PBS and Iowa Public Radio, and a lot of those roles were fundraising roles, which we can talk more about this eventually too. But I also got a lot of help and experience with, I didn't know what I wanted to do either. So I some help figuring out how to set up a small LLC as myself and start doing contract work. So I could do like a small job for a couple months with one place and another place and try a couple things on. That also helped me get really good at keeping record, which was another thing I had to do when I was on boards at Drake because things turn over so much. When I was a contractor, I was like, I'm only going to be here for a little bit, so I don't want you to lose all the work I've started. And it also got me to kind of learn how different office cultures work, what I liked, what I didn't like. And I think probably what will be a common theme with a lot of us is figuring out what you like and what you don't like and how that can inform a lot of where you go. I think college for me was really great at helping me figure out a couple of those key parts of myself so I could figure out how to problem solve everything else that came on the road. So definitely yes is the short.
Thanks, Annalise. How about for you, George? Oh, and you're muted.
So yeah, after I graduated high school, I remember not necessarily knowing what I was going to do, not necessarily knowing what route I was going to take. So I went to Rock Valley Community College in Rockville, Illinois, where I'm originally from. So overall, I remember I did that, and I kind of got my career started out in the restaurant business. I started out working at Dairy Queen right away, and then was working at it while being a GM at the Dairy Queen. So overall, going to school and then being a GM, so I kind of had to balance that out really quick. Overall, though, I ended up transferring to the University of Northern Iowa after 2 years. So yes, it helped me in that way because overall, I actually said I wouldn't be in Iowa without having gone to school. And also too, even aside from just my major was marketing. I did marketing management. And overall, I think the big thing was just me learning about myself, building relationships, and just getting a lot of different experiences that I can take with me for the rest of my life that'll help me up with every single job.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Catherine, anything that you want to add to that, or you think you covered it?
I think I covered it, but I did want to shout out in the process of figuring it out, I did talk to the Office of Community Engaged Learning along the way. So I recommend that too for service options in particular.
Thank you for the plug. Yes, we'd be happy to talk to people about AmeriCorps. I'm an AmeriCorps alum myself, so go AmeriCorps. Your career services office is really helpful as well, like Amanda works in. And then, George talked about networking and these connections that you make. Does anybody want to share a little bit about connections you made that helped you with your future? And how do you make those connections if you don't really know people? Or, we always hear that it's not what you know, it's who you know. How do you do that networking?
Yeah, I'm happy to start a little bit here. And for me, it definitely started while I was in college. So asking my professors, asking the offices for help with all sorts of things. And then it would be like, oh, a professor has a friend who has a business who needs a video person or, whatever. I think a lot of it too, again, is about knowing what you like and what you don't like. And you won't know those things till you try things. So I just continued to say like, hey, I can edit video for whoever, or edit audio, or do you need help with the podcast? All the things that I knew I did like. And then that helped me sort of narrow down like, okay, I actually don't like this stuff as much as I did. Or I also knew I really wanted a job that I felt like would still exist for a long time. And I got very nervous that there's so many video people and so many audio people. So I was transitioning into something that I saw a lot of people didn't like doing, which was fundraising. And I was like, well, I don't mind if the mission is strong. I don't mind asking people for money, and that'll set me up okay. So then, yeah, again, it was just asking people like, okay, who knows something? I did fundraising for the Student Alumni Association a little bit, for Colleges Against Cancer a little bit, for Relay for Life. So it was like a little bit of information about how fundraising can work. And then, yeah, I started, just wrote on a volunteer sheet for an org like, hey, I can do a little bit of fundraising help, and they needed it. So I got to help a little, and then they hired me as a contractor, and that was my first fundraising job. So not a lot of people go to school for fundraising. I think there's one major in the whole country, and it's new as of a couple of years ago. So nobody else in this field necessarily went to school for it. And I think you'll find there's a lot more things out in the world that you don't go to school for that you get trained on once you get in the world a little bit. So yeah, just figuring out what you like, what you don't like, putting yourself out there to trying new things, being okay having a positive attitude at first, and then learning how to step back if you decide this is not the right thing for me. But yeah, definitely just keeping talking to people all the time and being clear with what you need helps me a lot.
I can jump in. Yeah, I think networking is super important. It's something maybe in college people told me, but I didn't want to believe that that was so important. I mean, I knew like having positive relationships in your life and getting to know people was valuable in itself. I didn't realize what career benefits it had. I definitely, still have kept in touch with a few professors from Drake, and, like Annalise said, even things I didn't like one of my managers from an internship I did, which I kind of hated, not because of the people, but just the content. I didn't like it all, and that helped guide me. But I still talked to some of those people. They were able to be references to apply to be in AmeriCorps. So you never know. People are always going to, ask about who you know or find people you know and what they're able to say about you, even if you didn't explicitly like tell them or ask them to be a reference, is going to be important. And then particularly throughout my year with AmeriCorps, with my team, I was constantly entering new office spaces, new groups of people, and you really had no choice but to get to know people, to integrate into that group and, work with them and cooperate and get along. And, by the end of the year, when it was time for like job fairs and hiring, those people were huge resources. They'd give connections for informational interviews. And, the world gets really small quickly. And you don't want to leave a bad impression, if not just for like the human element of like being kind and connecting with others, then also for your own professional gain. And now, since becoming a full employee, I run into people all the time I met when I was still a volunteer. And to be able to like share memories and have positive interactions with them is great. And I'm rambling on, but the last thing is I know like my supervisors, when hiring me, I've talked to them since and they said, oh yeah, like we looked at your resume and we actually like without asking me, called different people they knew I would have interacted with. And so, people are always looking for information, whether you want them to or not.
Yeah, I think that's good advice, Catherine. That's really interesting though.
Yeah, I think networking is huge. A lot of my job consists of networking. So I will say honestly, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Even if you guys don't know much right now, it's good to put yourself out there and use it as a good learning experience. So a lot of stuff I do, it could be LinkedIn. It could be sometimes, even somebody just look up to, ask them to grab coffee to learn more about a certain job or position. It could be, reaching out or just talking what, hey, I heard you had a friend that had a friend, and just putting yourself out there, making those calls, sending out those emails and trying to put yourself out there. But I will say the biggest thing that you could possibly do right now, and I think Annalise spoke on, some of the things that she worked on and the things that built her up in that due time is overall working on yourself and setting yourself up for those big moments. I think that is absolutely huge. So overall, taking that time to do the work and set yourself up for success and whatever you want to do and whatever career path you may have. So I'll tell a small story. Even before I got started with Chick-fil-A and I went on to work my way up to the executive level, I was just a janitor taking out trash, cleaning toilets, and scrubbing floors. And then one day, the owner of a Chick-fil-A approached me and said I was doing a good job and had a great attention to detail, working and cleaning these toilets and doing all these different things. Little did he know, I had been reading books, learning about leadership, and overall I had a lot of restaurant experience in my past and everything else. But all those things kind of led up to that moment. And if you put in the work and you put in the effort, when that right person steps in front of you or that next relationship steps in front of you, that person that could change your life, you got to be prepared for it. You got to be ready to make that impact and make that difference. So overall, while you're waiting, while you could be one meeting away from that person that could change your life. So it's great to be, ready for that. And I think just practicing and working on your craft, reps remove doubt is what I like to tell myself. So I think networking and overall doing the work behind the closed doors when nobody's watching is absolutely huge.
Yes, I agree. And I think too, you both have kind of alluded to this, how opportunities can be presented to you for you, but you can also be presented opportunities for other people who then might think about you again at another point, right? Like, oh, I have a friend who's trying to start a business and they need someone who can code a little something. Oh, I have a friend who can code a little something and they just left their job. Connect those two people, and then both of them, and maybe the stuff that they continue on, I'll be their connection point. And it makes your community more tight knit, I think, in general, which is good for everybody. But yeah, it also leaves you as someone who now in other people's heads is able to make connections and is ready when you need something. So a lot of like manifesting and telling everyone you're around, like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need. And when they hear those things and associate it with you, they're like, oh yeah, you helped me with that guy. Actually, that reminds me, my sister, like I'm saying this because I've seen it all so many times now. So yeah, so just anything that can keep kind of building that web between people will ultimately be good for you, even if it doesn't totally seem like it at the time. And I think George said this well too, like trying anything is good because for the most part, after you say yes, there can be a no later on. Like after you try something, many things are not permanent, even though it feels like it. I remember I felt that way in college, like my first job will be my forever job, or even for 5 years, and that's forever, So you can say yes and try things. And so long as you, again, leave a good impression and have clear reasons and all that kind of stuff, a no can come later down the road. So there is very little risk to try and stuff.
And one last tidbit, kind of like George was saying, reach out to people, if you just want to have coffee with them or something. Rarely will people like say no to telling you about themselves. Like people I feel like love to share and be helpful. And if they see someone who just like wants to get to know them and their path, like few people are going to be like insulted or bothered by that. Like if anything, they'll be more than eager to talk to you and get to know you too.
Yeah, this is all great stuff. Great advice. Well, let's go into a little bit more detail on what you do in your roles, and then how do you think it's creating positive social change in the community? Anybody can go first.
Yeah, I can start again if you want. So my, again, kind of odds, I'm working part-time, like as an administrative assistant, basically. But right now it is tax season. And one of the programs that we do to help, again, Iowans with economic success is helping them file their taxes for free. So these are for people who are $64,000 a year or less in their household. We have actual accountants through this program through the IRS that we manage for the state of Iowa that helps people get their taxes done. So right now it is people call and they are panicked, they are scared, they owe taxes for multiple years, or they don't know what to do. And I get to be the first point of contact to say, I hear you. That can be really scary and we can fix it. So yeah, then I get to help people get connected with these people. And one of my favorite parts too is we have kind of three main parts of the business. So we've got the tax stuff, we've got helping people who have small businesses with like coaching and getting to the next step or the first step. And then we have a lending program. So not only are we able to make loans to people who can't traditionally get them, but we also help people prep for their meetings with the banks for their small business. So they know what's going to come up. So they're ready. They've got the numbers in front of them. And it's so cool to see people transition from these programs to the others. So someone comes in and they need tax help. I saw someone the other day who apparently had come in a couple of years previous. He had like 10 years he had not filed his taxes. They helped him get into the right shape there. And now he has this huge successful business and he was coming in just to say hi and thanks to all the coaches who'd been helping him. So yeah, it feels really good. And small businesses, no matter where you are the backbone of your economy. They keep things moving. They keep the money in your area. They empower people to make better decisions for themselves and for their family and for their friends. So it just feels good to be able to help people when they don't know where to go. That was something I loved about Drake, is that there was always an office for something. If you needed help, it's like, oh, I could go to that office for help. And then you graduate. And of course, everyone still has been very helpful when I do have questions, but trying to say, where do I go next for my business? I didn't know what to do. And you don't know who to trust and all that kind of stuff. So I liked knowing when I was a business owner before I worked here that the Iowa Center existed for those things. I was like, hey, I can trust you. I don't think I'm doing my banking right, or I don't know how to hire somebody or how to change paperwork, or right now we're in the midst of trying to open this space that's 10,000 square feet. So it's huge. And I'm like, I don't know how to know how much space is too much space and how much I should be paying per square foot, all those kinds of things. You can Google it. It doesn't help. So yeah, so I love being able to be that resource and that point of contact and that kind of first step of helping someone step into like a more confident and prepared version of themselves. So, and then through the Rook Room, it's honestly kind of the same thing. We've gotten to host a lot of like queer programming that has gotten a lot of the queer community closer. We've been able to host programs for people who are like, oh, I never get to see my friends. And now we come to this thing every time and it's become such a staple. And again, helping people build relationships more with each other and more in Des Moines, so that they'll continue to stay here, maybe starting their own businesses or working at other businesses and kind of keeping things going. So yeah, creating connection and community through all of this has been kind of my through line. And that's like the passion that keeps me going.
Perfect. I can go ahead and go next if that's okay. So overall with the YMCA overall, like I said, I'm talent acquisition. So yes, I recruit people and help people in the community get employed. But another thing that's really, really big to me is overall the opportunity I can see to kind of make an impact on their lives, to help them kind of figure out what that next step in their journey is and kind of help them put them on the right path to where they want to go in life. And that could be, the youth in our community, but that can also be adults as well that may have been working or may not know exactly what their strong suits are or what their skill set is, and helping them be able to find that through conversation and put them in the right place where they can be successful. So that means overall, even sometimes when I talk to even younger students, sometimes older people, when they go into interviews, it's like we talk about having how to dress an interview and how to have the perfect resume. But I think the biggest thing that nobody really talks about is kind of like knowing yourself, knowing why you want this job, knowing where you want to go in life, knowing what you can get out of this job, knowing your strengths, knowing your opportunities and what you can get better at. And overall, I feel like that's something that I will sit down and I will take my time to educate them and work their way through it, work through that with them. And I also to get to do things, awesome things like speak to IJAC classrooms and overall my part-time job and doing stuff with restorative justice. I get to take kids that nobody thought would succeed and kind of overall sitting down and working through a process with them and setting them up to be successful. And overall working with parents and families and everything else to help them get on the right track. And that's just by doing, process oriented thinking. We set a high, big goal and we just set small goals ahead of that. We don't necessarily look at the big, we just kind of take care of the process and let the rest take care of itself. So I get to impact kids and stuff like that, keep them out of jail, keep them out of the system, and help them, overall become better people and better individuals, as well as the employment side of things. And not just looking at it as a job, but a way to change lives and help them become the best version of themselves possible.
All right. So, I think it can be sometimes hard working at the federal level to feel that direct impact because, you've got the local, you've got the state, and then you've got the federal, and you start to get a little more removed from the people. So in my current role, I'm not always directly talking to, people who have, survived a disaster. However, I think being part of the broader mission, and I think FEMA's mission is very powerful. They particularly come into play when, the local and state government are beyond their resources and really need that additional pull, additional funding, additional coordination piece. So getting to work in planning and help facilitate like organization and efficiency and reporting, that it's all necessary because when something bad happens, communications can be down, transportation can be down. It's not your ideal scenario, obviously. And you have so much like right after something bad happens, the fact finding to figure out like what even is the situation to address. So to be part of that and be part of that like step one to response when it's like urgent and life-saving into recovery, those long-term programs to like build back communities stronger is really powerful, even if I'm just like one drop in the bucket of all the people that like make that happen. But to be part of something with a broad mission of helping people before, during, and after disasters has been really fulfilling. And, when it comes to that social change piece, it's, as an agency, understanding that communities that already have like disadvantages, poor infrastructure, whatever other issues that exist just on the day-to-day, those are exacerbated when there's, flooding or a tornado or a fire. Like those communities and like people who are going to need that increased assistance. And, getting to see all of FEMA's work to that. They have a long storied history, but they continue to reform and create better ways to reach everyone. And knowing that takes so many different approaches, whether it's different languages or, disability needs, all these things to address everything. That's an ongoing issue. And particularly on the AmeriCorps side, the year of service, I think an advantage to that was we did get to be a little bit more involved with the community because we would do side service projects wherever we were staying for a few months. And so we would kind of get to directly interact with people impacted and hear their stories. And we were able to do a little more like actual field work versus office work of helping register people for assistance and, be someone there to listen to people recalling like what could possibly be the worst day of their life. Like if they lost, people or everything. So, it comes in different ways. And I think, AmeriCorps, you kind of get that direct experience of really getting to be part of the community. And then as you get maybe not like higher in status, but just higher in like level of removal from the direct situation, you kind of have to ground yourself sometimes and remind yourself what you are part of that's bigger. But, it takes a village no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. That's one thing that I ask in a lot of the interviews I do for students, is how do you keep yourself motivated when you can't always see that direct impact or that person to person? And I think you explained that really well. Just understanding that you're one piece of this larger picture and it's important and we need this behind the scenes stuff happening to make this difference. So thanks for sharing that story. Okay, I'm going to pause here a moment and see if our audience has any questions. So feel free again to put questions in the chat box or raise your hand or just unmute yourself and ask. I always like to give a moment of silence to let people take that brave step. Okay, well, keep thinking about your questions. Let's see here. So, not everything about our jobs do we love. What are some parts that are challenging for you, and how do you get through those challenges?
I'm ready for this one. Partly because being a contractor put me in a really interesting position where I got to actually learn this, which I feel like if I went straight into an office job, I might not have. But in every nonprofit I've worked in, I've been very, very bad at boundaries. So when you are doing mission-based work, that is what keeps you going all the time, right? But it keeps you running on fumes. It keeps you running when you shouldn't be. It sometimes ends up creating more conflict because it makes things messy when you say yes to doing everything. Either you get overloaded or you end up taking work someone else could be doing, or blurring the lines that can be very helpful to keeping those boundaries in one place. And a lot of that, again, comes back to knowing yourself, which you won't be able to do until, I mean, I won't know myself probably for the rest of my life. There's so much more to learn. But continuing to know, like, this is where my limit is for number of hours per week, or I can only work on projects that take this much strategy for so long until I need to just do data entry, or stuff like that. Being able to create boundaries, learn how to express those boundaries, learn how to express those boundaries at work is also a really specific thing. So building a good relationship with your manager or whoever else might help you enforce some of those boundaries, either with other coworkers or with me. I needed, when I was at Iowa PBS, I had this great boss who was really good at helping me with boundaries with myself when I was ready to overwork myself and continue to do more stuff. He said, there's always tomorrow, like we can move on for today, stuff like that. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is like trying to reduce burnout and get good at setting boundaries. Because again, the mission will just keep you going forever until it doesn't. And you don't want to get to that point.
I agree. I agree with what she said. I think one of the hardest things, especially in nonprofit work, is being able to say no. And because there's so much that needs to be done, so much that we have to do. So I think that's for sure one of them my job. But I think another one of my job too, especially being a recruiter for a nonprofit, is overall having to get creative with my recruiting process. Like I can't compete with some of the other big companies as far as pay, or even have some of the resources to get in some of these bigger career fairs and get in front of better candidates. So I had to get a little bit more creative. So sometimes that could be me just setting up shop here, doing hiring fairs and doing open interviews here. It could be me getting up in front of IJAC classrooms and speaking to a bunch of students. It could be me doing things like, going to Roosevelt or some other public schools and teaching things on, self-efficacy, or just overall talking about how to interview and how to prepare for that interview, and overall just getting that exposure. So when it comes time for us to look for jobs, we have that, they could think of us, or even attending community events, like Juneteenth festivals and things like that, and just putting the tent the table up, or just sometimes going out to the farmers markets and talking to people. I had to get a very, very creative, and especially with it being really hard as far as finding talent, good talent nowadays. Just some things to get in front of people and educate them more about the YMCA and what we're doing. And so those are some small things I've kind of been doing to have to get creative, get out there, as well as setting up tables at colleges or other high schools, things like that. But just doing things to kind of get the name out there without with not very many resources, especially when it's just me recruiting for the whole entire Des Moines area. So it's got to get creative.
I can definitely echo the burnout piece. I think when you're part of any mission-driven organization, you're gonna run into that. You want to give it your all. You want to, contribute as much as you can, but everyone hits a wall. And, what I've learned in this job so far is I have to, prioritize self-care, and particularly my job kind of has like two angles. In emergency management, you'll hear there's like blue skies. That's when things are fine. Like you're just doing your normal day-to-day job. You're not out like actively responding to anything. And then there's gray skies, and that's when, you know, it's just chaos. It's long, demanding hours, like no days off, no breaks. So when you get to that gray skies, it's really important that during that more calm period, you did everything you could to prepare. So when you get there, hopefully you just don't hit that wall in the first, you know, few weeks or months of responding to something. So that's certainly a challenge, is knowing that the gray skies are always looming, and there's just a level of uncertainty to when I'll have to, you know, deploy out somewhere, even if it's just for a few weeks or a month of, you know, response. It's hard to like plan your life when you know you don't know when you're gonna have to drop everything. And luckily, like we can kind of get notice for some things. You may, you know, see a hurricane moving across the Atlantic, but you're not gonna know, say, when like an earthquake is gonna hit. So there's, you know, and then you're gonna have to drop everything. So that uncertainty is hard. It makes the work-life balance hard because you never really know when the like the real push is gonna come. Additional challenges, I mean, working for the government, I mean, bureaucracy. I don't even think I need to say more, but I'm sure everyone has hurdles in their job, but like the red tape can be a little irritating sometimes, but you know, it is what it is. Every job I know has their policies and hurdles. But if you can just persevere or accept that changes you want to make may take a little bit longer, then you'll be okay.
Yeah, I heard another theme I think that we could all probably relate to also is so about knowing yourself, right? But also building your village a little bit. I feel like when you have a good support system of like friends or family or even colleagues, you can manage some of that burnout. You have people who see you as a person, not just as a coworker, and you can say, I actually can't do that right now. And they'll understand that. And then when you are like, again, getting creative, I get more creative when I can collab with my friends. So I'm like, okay, I'm having this problem at work. What the heck do I do about it? They're always very helpful and come at it from an outside angle. So I think building your village can also help with the burnout, needing to get creative, lack of budget, all that kind of stuff. Helps having more people, more community, more networking happening too.
Well,
Yeah.
along that, oh, go ahead, Catherine.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, to building the village, one thing I do really like about my job is I'm on a set team of people. They all serve really different roles to like have this core come together. And I think that is one of the pros, is if you can learn the people you work with, like, you know, if even if there are hard deadlines, it's like if so-and-so doesn't get like a sandwich before we get to this deadline, like we're not getting there. Understanding and like reading those emotions, knowing what people need, whether it's to like go step aside for a minute to call family, like all those little nuances that you're not going to get with a strange group of like strangers coming together. I think I've really learned the value of a team and being able to count on the people around you, especially like in stressful and demanding jobs.
Well, what's a recent example of a story, an interaction that you were like, this is why I do what I do. This is what helps me keep going. Now, this wasn't in the prepared questions I sent you, so I'm kind of putting you on the spot. But if you can think of a recent example of a story you could share.
Oh yeah, I can go ahead and go. I think a lot of even throughout my career, I would say even throughout Chick-fil-A, I've always been kind of before when I would interview my staff, I would kind of ask them, you know, what you outside of making money, what do you want to get out of this job? What are you passionate about doing? And I remember having a gentleman that he didn't kind of know what he wanted to do, and overall worked with him for a couple of years. Not only did he go on to be a great leader, but now he's you know, going to school and playing soccer and doing great things in college. So overall, stories like that, but overall, that really moved me. That I'm still close with him. He still reaches out to me for advice. But just even sometimes, whenever I can get somebody hired here or a kid that didn't know kind of what they want to do with their careers and stuff like that throughout the Des Moines public school area, and then they actually figure out what it is that they want to do, and they leave, you know, feeling better about themselves, whether it's working with us or not. But sometimes whenever I do see them, you know, when I walk into YMCA or see their faces and saying thank you for helping me get this job, you know, that's what makes my day and fills my bucket.
I'd say at the Iowa Center, my favorite is when I'll have a voicemail from someone from the night before. They are panicking, they're worried. I call them back, and by the end of the phone call, you can just feel the relief from them that like things, if they're not taken care of now, they will be soon. And then for the Rook Room side, I mean, especially our Prism tabletop club, so our queer programming, there are hundreds of stories that have come out of that of people falling in love, people finding their friends. We have someone who came in who's kind of like masculine presenting, wearing like basketball shorts, and came into the event, came to the back, and under their shorts had a big skirt on. And for the first time, we're trying out what it would be like to wear a skirt, and was able to do that in our space. People who we will get tagged on Instagram. All these strangers met at the event were tagged in the middle of the night because they all kept hanging out for the rest of the night. Stuff like that, where it's like, okay, what we want is for there to people have people that feel like they can be the best version of themselves and have a community to lean on. And just being able to watch that happen kind of in real time, just like, yeah, totally keeps me going.
I think for me, so when I do like get to travel for work, so I was recently in Tennessee this winter, like January, after there were tornadoes there. And while I spent a lot of time in the field office away from a lot of actual members of the community, I, was just like going home for the night, home being a hotel. And I'm oftentimes wary of wearing like FEMA branded things out in public just because there's a lot of things that have gone wrong in the past. And, it's just sometimes easier to, kind of keep it low key. But I was just coming right back home from work, and I ended up having like an elevator ride up with a woman who was, out of her home and in the hotel that I was at. And we ended up talking for a while in the elevator. And I got a little nervous at first, and she was like, "Oh, you work for FEMA?" 'Cause she looked kind of stern, but then she just went into this whole story about losing her home, and, you know, that she, was staying here, and that she had actually, been able to get assistance and get help. And I knew that I hadn't played necessarily a role in that. I didn't like I said, you get a little bit removed, but just hearing someone say what they've been through and like feel like they're able to confide in you, and look at all the people entering the community, because they're like different construction workers and other people at that same hotel, to have her just be able to like feel comfortable talking about her experience and really look at even just like what I was representing, and to be appreciative of that when she lost everything, remind me, I'm like, that's what drives me. Like, I'm not going to be lifting up the debris or helping rebuild your home, or am I ever going to like really understand exactly what you're going through. Just to know like, okay, that's why. And so experiences like that are really powerful, even if they can be few and far between sometimes.
Catherine, do you feel like that when you look through like the data side of things, when you're like trying to see how everything's going, you can sort of see some of those like faces in that data a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they regularly, they do like a daily briefing every morning, and they do try to highlight different stories or like what assistance has been given that week. And you get to hear some of those tidbits come out, and yeah, it like puts a face to the number. You can see, oh, we did this much, but then it's like, like this person felt the impact of that. And yeah, I think, just like humanizing data really, really helps ground me.
Yeah, those are all super powerful stories. Just kind of give me chills a little bit to hear about the impact that you're able to make, and that I think that we can make an impact in any of our jobs, regardless of what sector we are in, what area we're in. And that's something we really try to get across to Drake students, is that you don't have to be in human services or sociology. You can be in the business school. You can be in any major, to be able to create change within your own realm or larger impact. And sometimes it's these small moments too that you can tell how much it meant to that other person. So I'm gonna I'm going to open it up one more time for any questions other people might have, and then might come back and ask you, is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you wanted to be able to share with the group today? Just any sort of final thoughts or pieces of advice, but I'll just give it maybe 30 seconds for people to jump in with some questions they might have.
You already prepared such great questions, Amanda. So I know I'm just part of the facilitation here, but I don't know if I have any questions. I've learned a lot from you all so far, so I really appreciated this little 45 minutes.
Okay, well, hearing none, yeah, let's go ahead and open it up for some final thoughts, or, if there's things again that you wanted to be able to share and we haven't got to yet, feel free.
Well, I liked the final question you had prepared, which is like, how can students get engaged now? I think, again, the thing we kind of keep talking about is trying to get to know yourself. So if you don't have a lot of great opportunities or don't totally know where to go for that yet, the first thing that I ever saw was a SWOT analysis. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. So trying to do something like that, or anything else you can find on Google that could help you figure out a little bit more about yourself. The first piece of advice I always give to students when they're talking about what they want to do after graduation is to just start making a list of things that you don't want to do. So if it's like, I do not want to sit in an office all day, or I do want to be able to talk to new people, or I want to be able to stay introverted, like making a list of the things that you just know you don't want to do, that helps a lot in guiding the other stuff. So I would say that's one thing, is getting to know yourself, getting to know what you don't want to do. And then if you are looking to like make new friends and make new connections, coming out to the workroom, and if you have like even an inkling of an idea of a business, or a seed of a business, or your friend does, or something like that, the Iowa Center has just been huge for helping people either turn that into a job, or for me, it was just a side gig for 5 years. It was this thing I got to do for fun. And now, because there's been so much interest, I've got this unexpected twist in life to be able to try to make it my full-time thing. So yeah, I don't know, try things, get to know yourself. And if you want to make friends, come to the Rec Room. If you want to start a business, come to the Iowa Center.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree with her 100% on everything. I think knowing yourself, I think the SWOT analysis is something I do. I also to make a list of what I don't want to do and what I do want to do, and don't be afraid to try new things. Put yourself out there. And then another thing is SWOT analysis. I like to do Enneagram tests and also Myers-Briggs tests to kind of get to know myself a little bit better, know what things I'm good at, know what I do like, know what I don't like, and just kind of find those unconscious things that I may not recognize in myself. Therapy has been huge for me as well, and overall
Yes.
building confidence. But I recommend all those things, and ultimately, don't be afraid to put yourself out there, take those leaps, take those chances, and you never know what can happen out of life.
What's your Enneagram, George?
3.
Me too.
There you go.
Cool.
Well, and it's funny because I've definitely heard of doing a SWOT analysis through work-related things, but I never thought about doing it on a personal level. And I think you've inspired me to do that. That's a cool idea.
I think the one that can be hardest is the T, right? Like the threats. But for myself, it's just like, where do I feel like my emotions get the most heightened? And that helps me figure out what do I not want to do? So like, what feels like conflict to me, and what feels like something I could work through? Like opportunities is like, maybe it heightens my emotions, but in a good way. And threats is like, it gets me stressed out in a bad way. So it's helpful, but it's hard, but it's good.
Yeah, that's helpful to know.
I definitely, echo what Annalise and George said. That self, just like learning yourself, wanting to grow, try new things. That is always going to be such a good thing, even ongoing, whether you get into that first job and don't like it, into the second, it's an ongoing process all throughout life. I say 2 years removed, but I think it will be useful throughout the rest of my life. If you want to get involved in emergency management or AmeriCorps, definitely have several places to start. For AmeriCorps, really, their website is great. They have a ton of different programs, everything from traveling around to maybe finding a program right in the community you're in or another place you want to live. So take advantage of that. I'm happy. If you have any questions about AmeriCorps and CCC, like actually living in, And doing like the residential program, I'd be happy to help answer that because I mean, it's a unique experience, that's for sure. For emergency management, I mean, if you really, really want to like feel the impact, it all starts local. Like we say that it starts at the local level and ends at the local level. So, you know, Des Moines, Polk County, whatever, they all have emergency management offices. So you can get involved with that. And sometimes they're just local community groups because those are going to be the people that if something happens are going to be the first there to help you, or the people, your neighbors, get to know them. Even as an individual, you can do things to just be more prepared for if there's a bad day. And also, once you graduate, you may be able to qualify for a lot of FEMA reservist positions. There's a lot of people, they don't work full time. They just get called in when they need a surge of employees because just the nature of the agency is sometimes there's a high demand for people and sometimes there's not. So not everyone's full time. And that's a chance that in whatever job you have or out of college, you know, you can maybe do a couple months a year to that or have different involvement without it being your full-time life. So if you're interested in that too, feel free to reach out. It can be a little bit of a beast to do like a federal resume and all that. But yeah, I mean, I think there's endless options and things to try. So good luck. It's okay to stray away from your majors.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was a journalism major. I use those skills every day, but I'm not a journalist. So, you never know where life is going to lead you through those connections, through those experiences, and it's not forever, like Annalise said. And if it's not what you end up liking, there's plenty more opportunities out there. So, I think this has just been so great to hear from all three of you about your pathways and experiences. Lots of words of wisdom for us to take into account. I'm excited to be able to share this with other students as well because just so many like little pockets of advice that all students should hear. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank
Round of
you.
applause.
Yeah,
For
this is
organizing.
fun.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, that is it. So I hope everybody has a wonderful evening and keep in touch with any of us if anybody needs anything.
Yeah, and if anyone asks for my contact info, then I'm fine giving that out,
Okay.
Amanda.
Thank you. Okay, perfect.
Same here.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Cool. Thank
Okay.
you.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye, Al.
You want to
Okay,
stop recording?